Hi everyone and welcome to BrickCats. I completed Rubblemaker's midi-plus scale Razor Crest, and that is the model I am reviewing today. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Season 2 of The Mandalorian, but sadly the Razor Crest was destroyed towards the end of the season after what was presumably many years of faithful service. The Razor Crest gets a ton of screen time, and it's no surprise at all why she is a fan favorite. In my reviews, I offer my opinions on aesthetics and features, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and I offer a conclusion. If you're watching this, I assume you've bought the instructions or are interested in buying them, and I assume a basic level of familiarity with Bricklink's ordering system. Lastly, my disclaimer on this and all my mock reviews is that I only use genuine LEGO bricks, and I always purchase the instructions for myself for my own personal enjoyment in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. The first thing that jumps out at you about this model is how big it actually is, and it's actually not that much smaller than the Playscale Razor Crest set 75292. Its size means that small details are still very noticeable, and Rubblemaker does a really good job minimizing the gaps and nailing the proportions. Moving from front to back, the shape of the nose section is appropriately blunt, and the ship's large cannons are on either side. The shape of the main fuselage is done really well with these angled side sections here, and the gap in the front is filled in with a curved slope, giving it the appropriate profile. The cockpit section is actually probably my least favorite part, but that's not because of the design, but more due to the limitations of the available elements. This is a good time to point out that in a number of places in this model, Rubblemaker is building in 3 and 5 width sections, which is not an easy thing to do when you have to plop those in the middle of a 4 or 6 wide section like he does here. The cockpit is 5 units wide, and it fits perfectly with the scale. However, I think the dark bluish gray pieces representing the windows don't offer quite enough contrast, and I did try this out in black, but I think black is a bit too harsh. Trans black would have been ideal, but none of the curve or wedge pieces come in trans black. And I also think the canopy section is too flat on the top. The actual Razor Crest cockpit bubble is more round. But that's a result of LEGO not making a 3x1 curved slope double to put over the top here. But piece limitations aside, another thing I really liked about this was that the cockpit section itself is subtly angled front to back. So you can see there's kind of a upward slant there. And that's done using a hinge piece and some spacing. And other than the minor issues I just pointed out, which again are not Rubblemaker's fault by any means, it still looks pretty good. Moving to the rear, the 2 side hatches, one on either side, they do drop down. And there's a small representation of Grogu and the Mandalorian inside. And these dark tan markings on the ship around the hatch are also screen accurate for this scale. Moving back to the top, we get to the wings and the engines. And I really like how these angles come together here in the corners. And it still has these sections angled slightly downward. A little difficult to see here. But it gives these wings a little extra thickness. The engines are probably the most recognizable part with the Razor Crest, and these are very well done. Inside here there's a snot construction, a stud snot on top construction, and those provide attachment points for these curved outer panels. And Rubblemaker uses the relatively new 3x3x1 round corner brick for the engine intakes. The main attachment point for the engines is just 2 Technic bricks and pins. And this is also very well constructed here, and I actually appreciated this because it was easy to attach and easy to disconnect. The escape pod is nicely shaped in the center here. And the angles at the back, again, they fit together really well with these slanted sections and this slope piece here kind of setting the angle there. The back of the model has a droppable ramp and some space to store things in there. There isn't anything particularly special about the undersides, mostly just anti-studs. The included landing gear just studs into the bottom like so. And sitting down on its landing gear, the model is reasonably stable. There's some play because there's a rotation point. Here, I'll try and show you. A rotation point on these rear landing gear pieces, but it sits by itself just fine. It doesn't tip over or anything like that. The display stand for the Razor Crest is included with the instructions and the parts list. And like I said, it just sits in that little slot in the bottom at a nice viewing angle. And the stand itself looks very good, and most importantly, it's also very stable. So overall, this is a really great looking model, and I definitely appreciate inclusion of the stand and the landing gear. It sits pretty nicely on a shelf or desk, and the landing gear means that it's very usable in a scene type MOC kind of thing. This model uses 199 elements and 1,436 pieces. Parts for the stand are included, so if you don't want the stand, basically all you have to do is search your wanted list for the color black and remove all of the results except for the Technic pins, part 2780, the tile round corner 2x2 macaroni pieces, part 27925, and the Technic axle 3L, part 4519. The 2-bar 3Ls specified in dark bluish gray, part 87994, are hidden and can be any color. And everything except the dark bluish gray hinge brick in steps 1 through 12 are almost completely hidden in the final build and can be any color. And that dark blue hinge brick you can see right at the top here. I've excluded the Technic pins here because those are very common in black anyway. And I say almost because you are able to see some of the parts in the final build with the side hatches open. But if you're just using this for display, you're not going to notice, or you can just substitute a neutral color like black or dark bluish gray, and you're not going to notice at all. If you don't care about building Baby Yoda and Mini Mando, you can eliminate the following pieces. The two 1x8 tiles, part 4162 in light bluish gray in step 26, are completely hidden and can be any color, and those rest under the cockpit assembly on either side. The two Technic lift arm thick 1x5s, part 32316 in light bluish gray, are hidden and can be any color in steps 35 and 41. Those lift arms connect these triangular sections back here to the frame. And note that the light bluish gray Technic pins should remain light bluish gray, so you can see the Technic pin here, and the lift arm is just inside here. 29 of the 34 total grill tiles, part 2412B in dark bluish gray, make up the floor pattern inside the Razor Crest. These are difficult to see and could be omitted if you don't want to buy them or don't have them. The other 5 are on top of the rear section here, so you're going to want to keep those dark bluish gray. And the floor tiles are added between steps 76 and 89. The parts in steps 96 and 97 are completely hidden and can be any color. 3 of the 44 plate 2x3s in light bluish gray, part 3021, used in step 103, are hidden and can be any color. And these are used in the nose assembly here. And similarly, 3 of the 29 plate modified 1x2 with 1 stud in light bluish gray, part 15573 in step 113 are hidden and can be any color. You add 4 of these pieces in this step, and the one you want to keep as light bluish gray is the one on the edge. And you can see these here. So these 3 you can substitute. This one you're going to want to keep light bluish gray because you can see it at the bottom. 6 of the 11 slope curved 2x2 inverted are hidden and can be any color. These are used to strengthen the clip connections that hold the side panels in place. 1 out of the 5 hinge brick 1x2 base in light bluish gray, part 3937, and 1 of the 5 hinge brick 2x2 top plate, part 6134, are used to connect the cockpit assembly to the main part of the fuselage. Obviously those are completely hidden, they're right under here, it's right under here, and can be any color. The engines have a lot of hidden parts, so feel free to substitute any color for the following. And the only problem I ran into buying parts for the stand were these Technic slope pieces here. They since seem to have gotten more available and less expensive, but for some reason when I ran the algorithm these were costing me like $1 each. So keep an eye on that, and that was in late September 2021 by the way. And the instructions call for 4 of them, so I was only able to get 2. I actually ordered 4, but I received 3. And the seller that I bought them from sent me the wrong part for the 4th one. And the other 2 are supposed to go on this end. So you can see that I just substituted a 1x2 black brick here, and it works just fine. There's no real reason why you have to buy any of these for structural purposes. I mean, visually it does look nice. But structurally, without these, the stand is perfectly stable by itself. So in your algorithm results, if you see this Technic slope, very expensive, know that you can substitute 1x2 black bricks, or don't buy them. And lastly, aside from the 1x8 tiles I mentioned earlier that are underneath here and hidden, this model, as you can see, Rubblemaker loves his tiles. And this model does require a fair number of tiles in light bluish gray. All of these are visible, of course, so I don't recommend substituting any colors for them. You might be able to sneak in some light bluish gray or even the old light gray if you've got them. But for large quantities of tiles, I find that those are typically rather expensive on Bricklink, and I recommend buying them directly from Lego Bricks and Pieces. And I find that they tend to be, on average, probably 40% cheaper than your average Bricklink seller. And also they're guaranteed to be new pieces, so you're not going to get like a really scratched tile from some random seller. Shipping for Bricks and Pieces is cheap. It's $2.95 in the United States. And the only downside is that it tends to take a little bit longer to show up than a normal Bricklink seller. My Bricks and Pieces orders are taking about 10 to 14 days total from start to finish in August and September 2021. The Razor Crest instructions have 508 steps, and these include the stand and the landing gear, and I did not have any problems following them. From start to finish, I estimate it probably took me 5 or 6 hours without any pre-sorting of pieces, and keep in mind that was spread over a couple of days, so I had some setup and breakdown time in there as well. The parts that you add in each step are outlined in red, and it's very easy to follow. And again, I didn't have any problems with viewing angle or confusing parts to add or anything like that. So instructions are very well done. This model is reasonably sturdy, but there are definitely some weak points you should look out for. More than any other section, I find that these subassemblies running right alongside the cockpit here tend to come loose, and that's due to the connections that join them to these angle panels here. So there's a 1x1 bracket here, and then a 1x2 bracket, 2 1x2 brackets under here, and it just kind of rests on top of those. So they're rather loose, they're easy to bump, and when you grab this, since you tend to grab it up here, you can see this one just came loose. It's easy to just knock these off. On a similar note, the landing gear bulges are also a little fragile. These are just held on by these 1x2 brackets here. Luckily, those are pretty easy to fix. These ones can be a little bit more finicky. You can swoosh this model reasonably well, provided your hands are big enough to grab it. I find that the middle is the most secure place to apply pressure, and At the same time, I don't recommend too many jerky movements because these wings can come off. Usually not the Technic pins actually. So typically what happens is that this 1x4 connection, which is studded into a 3 wide plate here, or section here, that just tends to come off. And when that happens, the engine just flies off and shatters on the ground. But smooth, slow rolling is fine. Here, let me see if I can. Yep, see. So don't shake it too hard. The landing gear is also a little finicky just because it only studs into the bottom here, but again, those are designed to be removed and added back in. And again, this stand sets at a nice angle, and there's no reason for me to think that this would be anything other but stable for as long as you leave it on the shelf. In conclusion, this was a really fun model to build, and it's in a nicely sized package. And again, Rubblemaker, I think, really did a good job putting in an appropriate level of detail without underdoing it or overdoing it. And it's obviously worked really hard to get the correct shapes and proportions for, like, these cannons look great, the engines are really well scaled. I love the hatch, and yeah, it's just really, really nice to look at with some interesting patterning on the top here. So overall, just very well done. As far as cost goes, with no substitutions, I was getting Bricklink algorithm results of between 4 and 6 stores and $150 to $170 before shipping and tax. And that's about $170 to $200 including shipping and tax. With the number of substitutions you can make or drawing from your existing inventory, I'm not really sure how instructive it is to run the algorithm with some of the recommendations I made in the part section. No one part really sticks out as rare or expensive with the possible exception of those technical slopes. So I think your biggest cost savings, honestly, is going to be buying the tiles you need in bulk directly from LEGO via bricks and pieces. So thanks as always for taking the time to watch my review of Rubblemaker's Razor Crest model. If you've built this model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question about something I didn't cover, please leave them below in the comments. If you're interested in another one of Rubblemaker's excellent models, consider watching my review of his Nebulon B frigate. And also consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or following me on Instagram. I hope to see you back next time.